Welcome to the Berean Voice. I'm Randy Seaver. In our last video, I suggested that I might take one session and simply talk about the word world. I'd like to do that today. And the reason I'd like to do that is because we, soteriological monarchists, sometimes called Calvinists, have been accused of redefining this word to suit our theological system. And so I would like for us to simply look at the way the word kosmos is used in the New Testament. Now, mind you, there are translations in which the word for age is translated world, and so I'm not talking about those particular usages, but I'm talking about the usage of the term kosmos in the New Testament scriptures. We want to see if indeed we have reinterpreted or redefined that term to suit our system, or if what we are saying about the word is in reality its true meaning. The best I can tell, the word has one of the following meanings in the New Testament. It can refer to the inhabited earth. It can refer to the ordered system of the universe, including its inhabitants. 3, it could refer to a large portion of the population in a given locality at a particular time. 4, it could refer to Gentiles in contrast to Hebrews, or the people of every nation in contrast to the covenant people of God alone. It can be used to talk about the ungodly who have set themselves against God and His truth. As in the first chapter of John, he says the world did not know Him. This is probably the way in which the word is being used there. It can be used of mankind in general, and it can be used of the world system characterized by the spirit of the age. And so what we'd like to do is simply go through a number of verses in the New Testament and see how the word is used. As I mentioned in the last video, it is almost never used to talk about every single person who has ever lived, is living, or who shall ever live on the face of the earth. That is usually not the meaning of the word, and you're going to see that as we make our way through this material. Now, this is not a difficult exercise. All you need to do is get yourself a good concordance. You can find Strong's Exhaustive Concordance online and use it there. And then simply go through all the verses that use this word world and see how the word is being used. And that's what I'd like to do today. Obviously, this is not going to be an exhaustive study, but I'd like to just look at a number of verses. Most of them, interestingly enough, are found in John's literature, in particular John's Gospel. For example, let's just go through the list. And then I would ask you to do the same thing to verify that what I'm saying is true. First of all, the Gospel of John, chapter 1 and verse 9 says, "He was that true light that coming into the world enlightens everyone." In other words, he's talking about him coming into the inhabited earth in his incarnation. In John's Gospel, chapter 1 and verse 10, we read, "He was in the world," that is the inhabited earth. "The world was made by him," that is the entire cosmos. "And the world did not know him," that is the world in rebellion against God and His truth. The world did not know him. In John chapter 7 and verse 7, Jesus said to his brothers, his unconverted brothers, "The world cannot hate you." He's talking here about the world in rebellion against God. If he were talking about every single person without exception, certainly they were part of that world. But he says the world cannot hate you. And so the world is something that is other than his unconverted brothers in this case. John 12, verse 19, the scribes and the Pharisees were concerned because of Jesus' popularity, and they said, "Look, you're not accomplishing anything at all. The world has gone after him." In other words, a large number of people in a given locality. They did not imagine that everyone on the planet, including themselves, had become his followers, but they're talking about a large number of people who were following him. The world has gone after him. John 13:1, that he should depart out of the world. In other words, that he should leave the inhabited earth and return to his Father. John 14:19, before long the world will not see me, but you will see me. Now, we're the disciples, not part of the human family. Obviously, he's using the word in a different sense. He's not saying every single person on the face of the earth will not see me any longer, but you're going to see me. John 14:22. Why do you intend to show yourself to us, the disciples said to Jesus, and not to the world? Again, the disciples were part of the human family, and yet they said they distinguished themselves from the world. Why will you not show yourselves to the world? They're clearly distinguished from the world in this verse. John 15:18 through 19. If you belong to the world would love its own. But because you are not of the world, that is, you are not of those who have set themselves against God and his truth, because you are indeed part of the human family. And so he's not here talking about every single individual on the face of the earth. If you were of the world, well, they are part of the human family, but there is a sense in which they're not part of the world. John 16:20. You, the disciples, will weep and mourn while the world rejoices. Again, they were part of the human family. The world here does not include Jesus' disciples, and yet they are part of the human family. He's certainly talking here about those who have set themselves against God and against his truth. John 17:9, I'm not praying for the world, but for those you have given me. Were not those he had given him part of the human family? Of course they were. John 17:14, they are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. Again, does that mean they're not part of the human family? Moving then to Romans chapter 1 and verse 8, your faith is spoken of throughout the whole world. Does that mean that every inhabitant on the planet is talking about their faith? And I think the answer is no. Moving to Romans chapter 11 and verse 12. If their transgression, that is the transgression of the Israelites, means riches for the world, and of course, as you look at the next part of the verse, in parallelism, it's obviously talking about the Gentiles, in contrast to the covenant people of God. If their transgression, that is the transgression of the Israelites, means riches for the world, so obviously the world here cannot refer to every single individual, because Israel would be excluded from that, according to this verse. The same is true in verse 15. You'll have to go there and read that. Moving to Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 7. Speaking of Noah, by his faith he condemned the world. Does that mean that everyone without exception was condemned? And of course the answer is no. His children were also saved. And so they were not condemned. And so he and his children were saved while the rest of the world was condemned. And so the rest of the world does not mean every single person without exception. James 4:4 says, friendship with the world is hatred or enmity toward God. Does that mean that if one loves the members of the human family, they must hate God? Of course not. Obviously, the word world here is not used in that sense. 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 5, he did not spare the ancient world, but protected Noah and 7 others. Were Noah and his family not part of the human family? All without exception. And of course, they were spared. And so, world here cannot mean every single person without exception. 1 John chapter 2 and verse 15, do not love the world. He's speaking here about the world and its ungodly, worldly system. Does that mean we're not to love the members of the human family, all without exception? And of course the answer is no. And then one final one in Revelation chapter 12 and verse 9, the great dragon who leads the whole world astray. In the verses that follow, John speaks about those who have overcome the world, overcome the accuser of the brethren. They have overcome the great dragon by the blood of the Lamb. So obviously there are those in the whole world who have not been led astray. And so world here can't refer to every single individual who has ever lived, is living, or shall ever live. Now, there are other verses that you can look up as well, and I would encourage you to do that, but the point that I'm trying to make is we have not redefined the word at all, but we have simply defined the word according to its preponderant usage in the New Testament scriptures. One of the things you're going to find is that there are almost no verses in which this word kosmos is found that refer to every single person on earth who has ever lived, is living, or shall ever live. We have not redefined the term. We have simply defined it according to its biblical usage. And so I hope that will be helpful to you as you seek to understand how these things fit together in the New Testament scriptures. Don't simply try to define biblical words by going to an English dictionary, because you're probably going to be led astray if you do that. And don't ever let anyone tell you that we have redefined the word cosmos, world, simply to fit our theological system. No, we have defined the word the way we ought to define the word by looking at the way the word is used in the biblical literature. And I guarantee you that if you will do the same thing, you're going to find that what I have suggested to you is reality. Well, I'm not going to spend any more time on this. The next time, Lord willing, we're going to be looking at Romans, the 5th chapter, that talks about Christ as the head of all his posterity and Adam as the head of all his posterity. And we're going to see how that one of the verses there has been used to try to prove universal atonement, but has completely misconstrued what the text is saying. So we want to look at that in some detail in our next video. I hope this has been helpful. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to leave those in the comment section. I'm getting the impression that what I'm talking about isn't something that most people have an interest in, because there have been very few views. If you would like to see other people watching these videos, I hope that you'll share them and encourage other people to watch. Well, until next time, may God richly bless you.